It is Wednesday, my dudes, and by Wednesday, I mean the wee hours of Wednesday when you're seeing this. But that is because Tuesday night is Impeachment, American Crime Story, and today I'm here to review the penultimate 9th episode and give you my thoughts on where this series is headed as we go into the finale next week. So, wow, I can't believe this is the penultimate episode. I'm sort of surprised that it's here quickly, but also this did very much feel like a penultimate episode. To me, we visit all of the major players throughout the story, specifically the 3 women. We see all of them give these really long monologues about what this scandal has done to them, how they feel about it, and kind of have their emotions put under a microscope for this episode, which definitely did make this have a sense of finality to it, that I'm interested to see now what is left for the finale other than the specific impeachment hearings and then the neat tying up of some of these storylines. So going through the episode chronologically to kind of review each of those individual elements, the first thing I noticed and took a note on was Linda compares herself to how the Clintons are making her out to be Joseph Goebbels, who, if you don't know, was a Nazi chief propagandist. He was like the minister of propaganda. He focused a lot on the filmmaking that the Nazis used at the time to paint Jews in a very absolutely outright hateful way, and really was the one in charge of transforming the public opinion toward a more anti-Semitist rhetoric. What I do think is interesting about Joseph Goebbels in comparison to how Linda uses him is he was known for being really good at public speaking, which at the end of the episode, Linda specifically talks about how she's not. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to say, nor is the show, nor is even Linda trying to say she's like Joseph Goebbels. She's just trying to say that she's being made out to be the one that's preaching all of these things that are going on, and that she's kind of the scapegoat for this media presence of this scandal, whereas what she's trying to say is like there's larger evils at play, whereas other people, including the grand jury and the public and the press, do sort of see her in this light of like, but you kind of were pushing this stuff along too, so it's not like you're wholly innocent or you were just doing this because you absolutely had to. So I don't know, I thought that was just a really interesting reference or comparison. Just figured that little tidbit would be tucked away in here in case you were looking for it. When we get to Monica going in front of the grand jury, I love how they frame her to be so small, not only in the hallway with all of the guards or security officers, or I'm not exactly clear who those people were, but all of those men who surround her are much larger, much taller than her. And as she walks into the courtroom, it almost looks like everything is elevated above her, and it just shows her small and vulnerable position going into this grand jury hearing. I mean, even the fact that she has that sweet moment in the beginning where she asks if she could find out people's names, and they say, obviously, legally, no, you can't. And she tries to get them to call her Monica as opposed to Miss Lewinsky. And it's so hard because you watch her go through the painful process of reliving some of her most embarrassing and hurtful, painful, personal memories in this like very cold, matter-of-fact way. And obviously there's kind of the arc with her in the grand jury of by the end they're referring to her as Monica. They're asking her more personal questions. She even throws in the F Linda trip at the very end that they all laugh at. So there is kind of like this feeling that other people may understand her, which I almost feel like is a metaphor for the show and Monica Lewinsky's involvement in it, to see like the public that was previously antagonistic towards her can now understand and maybe not agree with the things she did, but understand how things happen and have a fuller picture of who she is as a person. And so in these scenes, Monica mentions that the president was sunshine, which I think was a really great juxtaposition to what Hillary said to Bill of "you are chaos" last week's episode. I thought it's just really interesting how both of those things have an immense otherworldly control over humans and people, but they're two opposite sides of the spectrum, and both are probably true to some degree in the same person, as he uses that dazzling effect, as Hillary says last week, to kind of get people to agree with him until he no longer needs them, which is obviously the point in the story that we're at now with Monica. So I thought that was just a great line. And then the last thing I wanted to point out, the part where she asked the FBI agent to leave the room, because not only at that point does she feel comfortable enough with the female FBI agent and the grand jury to kind of be alone in there without this person who has sort of been like the good cop in her whole experience with the FBI, but when he kind of stares her down and she kind of looks at him and starts to say these things matter-of-factly about how the FBI treated her in hindsight, you see how obvious this felt like a threatening move towards her and how ridiculous and absurd and unlawful it feels that she was treated the way she was in the Ritz-Carlton. Being forced to sit with her that entire episode really pays off here emotionally. Just seeing how it all plays out, I think, gives the American public or anyone watching this kind of a better view of what it felt to be in her shoes. I have to give a huge round of applause to Annalee Ashford. That scene with her and her husband at home, she's bruised, she's out of surgery, and she realizes that not only is this case not going anywhere, but her marriage is failing. She is sick and tired of fighting for the contentment of this man who didn't believe her to begin with, and she's been struggling to fight all of these people, and at the end of the day, it's the person she goes home with, the person she sleeps next to at night, that doesn't believe her. And I thought that was a fantastic scene. I thought her acting was absolutely impeccable, and I think it's great that we get to see that while Paula Jones may not have been this fierce and angry person in the public eye and where we saw her or where she's been recorded in history, I think seeing her in this imagined, obviously, private scene with her and her husband, you get to see her have this agency and this power. Again, so interesting to me, and the fact that we get to explore that. I thought it was just a great scene, so well written, so well acted. I absolutely loved it, and I think it is the perfect, capping of Paula. It would honestly be okay if we never saw her again, because that was just a really great final way to show she's not this very meek, kind of confused woman. She is someone that was fighting for what she believed in, and there was a point where she was not gonna do it anymore. Lastly, when Linda is sitting in front of the grand jury, she is talking about abuse of power and how she had to say these things because Bill was in control and Bill was manipulating her, and she had all these emotions. She could be talking about herself. All of those things apply to her as well, which is obviously what the show is trying to imply, and I think that's a great messaging, is it's like, when you're trying to help someone else, but you're doing the same things that you're trying to help the other person get away from someone else, you're really no better. And I think this applies in the same sense to Linda with this phrasing of how Bill treated Monica versus how she treated Monica. Both are extremely predatory, unhealthy, really inappropriate relationships. But it also mirrors what Bill says in other episodes of how he's a feminist and he puts all these women into his cabinet and he's fighting for women's rights, but yet behind the scenes he's having inappropriate sexual relations or even worse encounters with women, and clearly not even respecting his own wife enough to be faithful to her. If this season has a theme, it is don't be a hypocrite, basically. It's like the saying, before you remove the sawdust from your neighbor's eye, you must first remove the plank from yours. You have to be aware of your own shortcomings and issues and sins as an individual before you can go around accusing others of doing potentially the same thing. Last, just because I want to be as fair as possible with these reviews, and this has already gone over what I intended it to be, so why not? Let's throw something else in there. I typically commend this show and a lot of other Ryan Murphy projects that deal with the political aspects of things, because I feel they tend to be very unbiased, very fair, and give non-condemning portrayals of people on either side of the political aisle. But I feel in this episode, in the very last scene, and I haven't really felt this way all season, but I felt it here, when Juanita's affidavit gets brought back up as something she lied on, and she's bringing up the fact that she was assaulted by the president. I feel like the portrayal of Ken Starr in the scene, whether accurate or not, I cannot vouch for that. It feels very stereotypical of how they're trying to portray him as this man who only cares about impeachment and who could not give a crap about any of the kind of like victims in the way of this. And now I understand that this could be the argument that the creative team is trying to make. This could truly be how their opinion of Ken Starr is. I don't know, and I'm not going to try to vouch for that. I just feel like it was a little too on the nose of him trying to be like, well, that doesn't help our case for impeachment, so just make it a footnote. Like, it felt so obviously dismissive that it has to be a point from the creative team is the only way I can rationalize it. Going off of that, I think then there's the argument that when it comes to political scandals such as this impeachment and those involved, the victims only get recognized and their names known or their cases solved if it is going to be a political benefactor for those trying to attack the other political side, which is just the sad truth of politics. And on that note, that is my review of episode 9, the penultimate episode of Impeachment American Crime Story. What did you think of this episode? Please let me know in the comments down below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe if you're not already to make sure you catch next week's review of the finale of Impeachment American Crime Story, as well as my reviews of all other kinds of movie and TV shows. Thank you all so much for watching. Have an absolutely amazing day, and I'll see you in my very next video. Bye, everyone.